make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Coming up on Arirang News. The top nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan, strongly denounced North Korea for its latest ballistic missile launch and hostile rhetoric against the South, and call on the regime to return to talks. Artificial intelligence is drumming up excitement across the global economy, and Samsung is joining the wave, launching what it calls the world's first AI phone. Its new Galaxy S24 devices take features to the next level with AI. Ahead of South Korea's general election in April, rival parties are coming up with election pledges to deal with the country's birth rate that's falling to fresh lows, from mandatory paternity leave to housing support. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with the nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan gathering here in Seoul amid concerns over closer ties between North Korea and Russia. They blamed the North for unnecessarily raising tensions on the Korean peninsula and urged the isolated government to engage in dialogue. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Bae-eun-ji, leads our coverage tonight.
The nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan met in Seoul to discuss issues on North Korea amid heightened tensions in the region. Seoul's nuclear envoy Kim Gun said Pyongyang's version of a closed-door policy will only hurt itself and called on the regime to return to talks.
We call on North Korea to immediately stop provocations, lift its self-imposed ban on talks, and come back to the path of denuclearization, peace, and prosperity.
His remarks come as North Korea fired an intermediate-range ballistic missile on Sunday, which could be capable of targeting U.S. military bases in Guam or Japan. The North later claimed that this was a successful test launch of its solid-fuel missile carrying a hypersonic warhead. During the Trilateral talks on Thursday, the U.S. nuclear envoy also criticized the North for unnecessarily raising tensions.
The United States is also deeply concerned by the recent uptick in hostile rhetoric, particularly toward the Republic of Korea, from the DPRK regime. Such rhetoric is unnecessarily increasing tensions on the Korean peninsula.
Thursday's meeting was just a day after the North Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee visited Moscow, where she met Russian President Vladimir Putin and discussed enhancing bilateral relations in all areas, including what Russia called sensitive ones, which could mean military cooperation.
The transfer of these weapons and related material flagrantly violate the multiple UNSC resolutions and supports Russia's war of aggression. We also need to closely monitor what Russia might provide to North Korea in return for these arms exports.
The U.S. and its allies have accused Russia of using North Korean missiles in its war on Ukraine. And officials from Seoul and Washington have said North Korea is applying munitions to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine in return for satellite technology. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
The United Nations Security Council is meeting to discuss North Korean threats. The UNSC has announced via its website that its members will convene on Thursday morning in New York for closed consultations on non-proliferation in North Korea. This will be the first UNSC meeting of the new year on North Korean matters and is the first one that South Korea has requested since securing a non-permanent seat on the council. The meeting was requested by other countries too, such as the U.S. and Japan, after the North launched an intermediate-range ballistic missile on Sunday. Back in November, North Korea launched its military spy satellite. Now, the Pentagon says the U.S. takes the spy satellite seriously if it has any warfare capabilities. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
A Pentagon official has spoken about the possible threats posed by a North Korean military spy satellite launched in November. As far as the idea of North Korea as a threat from space, if there are things that enable their ability to fight a war, that is a thing that we take seriously and track and build into our plans, said Dr. John Plum, U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, on Wednesday local time. The comment from the senior Pentagon official came after Pyongyang announced that it had successfully launched a military spy satellite on November 21st. Not long after the launch, the regime claimed the satellite had taken pictures of U.S. military bases in Guam and Hawaii, as well as a wide range of regions in South Korea. Dr. Plum added that there were a, quote, host of problems from North Korea, including its ballistic missile programs and violations of UN Security Council resolutions. A top satellite and missile expert from South Korea, Professor Chang Yong-gun, said a satellite's ability for warfare comes down to its ability to collect information.
The ability for warfare when it comes to a satellite is its ability to acquire information to make attacks more effective.
The military in both South Korea and the U.S. agreed that Pyongyang's satellite had entered orbit successfully, but questions remain as to its operational and reconnaissance capabilities. South Korea, the U.S., and Japan have agreed to closely monitor and firmly respond to potential technology transfers between Moscow and Pyongyang. Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo have been condemning Pyongyang's satellite launch as a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions that ban its use of ballistic missile technology. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, Pakistan has attacked Iran in response to the latter's earlier strike on its territory. Iran says 3 women and 4 children were killed in the aftermath. Our Lee Soo-jin has the details.
Pakistan has carried out retaliatory attacks against Iran, further adding to fears of a wider Middle East conflict. According to AFP and foreign media outlets on Thursday, a Pakistani senior intelligence source said that the Pakistan military used Air Force fighter jets and drones to hit at least 7 militant group camps in Iran.
This morning, Pakistan undertook a series of highly coordinated and specifically targeted precision military strikes against terrorist hideouts in Sistan-o-Baluchistan province of Iran.
The deputy governor of the southeastern Iranian province where the explosions took place on Thursday said in a television interview that at least 7 people, including 3 women and 4 children, were killed in the aftermath. This comes after Iran conducted missile and drone attacks on Pakistani territory on Tuesday that left 2 children dead. And after the Pakistan government on Wednesday recalled its ambassador from Iran and prohibited the Iranian ambassador to Pakistan, who is currently visiting Iran, from returning. Iran, which has a Shia Muslim majority, said that it only targeted members of the Sunni militant group Jaish al-Adl.
None of the nationals of our neighbour, brother and friend Pakistan were the target of Iran's drones and missiles.
Pakistan's retaliatory strikes against Iran are yet another escalation in tensions in the Middle East, where regional hostilities have been heightening from the armed conflict between Israel and the Palestinian group Hamas in Gaza. According to a statement released by the U.S. military on Wednesday, the U.S. has also carried another round of attacks against 14 Houthi missile launchers that were targeting international shipping routes. This marks the 4th time that the U.S. has struck the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen in less than a week. The U.S. Central Command said a drone fired from areas controlled by the Houthis struck a U.S. vessel earlier on Wednesday. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And as we just saw, conflicts that are triggered by the Israel-Hamas war are getting even more complicated in that region, involving others like the U.S. and Iran. Our Yoon takes a closer look at what's behind all this and where it may go from here.
The hostilities in the Middle East have intensified as Iran and the so-called Axis of Resistance, Iran's proxy group Houthis, continue attacks on Israeli forces and their allies. These indirect confrontations, however, do not seem to be merely in retaliation to Israel's bombardment of Gaza. Then what could be their possible intention?
Iran certainly has a strategic benefit in this attack in IR perspective, because Iran's allies and aligned country has a benefit, such as, for example, the China, who originate much of this missile technology, certainly enjoy to see U.S. and their ally naval resources tied up in the Red Sea.
Among the countries that could benefit from the situation is Russia, as Washington's attention could be diverted from Moscow's conflict with Ukraine.
So if we could see a bigger picture, they could enhance the alliances with anti-American countries.
Professor Peg also offers a second possible trajectory. Iran is trying to harm Israel and threaten Saudi Arabia by disrupting international shipping that go through the Gulf of Aden.
Saudi Arabia, you were kind of keep pushing the resistance of access, Yemen, Houthis, and you're trying to get close with Israel.
In other words, Iran is trying to show Saudi Arabia that it has the capability and leverage to inflict harm on some of its key projects, including Vision 2030 and Neom City, which are concentrated on the Red Sea. If the bargaining power of Iran gets bigger, so does that of the Houthis. That's because Houthis align with Iran, although they are not considered one entity that obeys orders from Iran. Professor Beck, as a political scientist, does not see many incentives for Iran and the axis of resistance, including Houthis and Hezbollah, to continue war against Israel. However, the possibility of a fifth Middle East war happening could rise if Israel invades Lebanon or Yemen. Yoon Hee, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, artificial intelligence is drumming up excitement across the global economy, and Samsung is joining the wave. Its new Galaxy S24 devices take features to the next level with AI. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
The South Korean tech giant has unveiled its first AI smartphone, the Galaxy S24 series. This lineup includes the S24, the S24 Plus, and the S24 Ultra, boasting various functions backed by artificial intelligence.
As mobile devices become the primary access point for AI, Samsung Galaxy will be an open gateway for secure and meaningful AI experiences on a global scale.
The most significant feature is the on-device AI, which allows users to enjoy the cutting-edge technology of generative AI without connection to the cloud. The Galaxy S24 series comes with Live Translate, providing two-way, real-time voice and text translations during phone calls, breaking down language barriers. No third-party apps are required, and on-device AI ensures complete privacy for conversations. In collaboration with Google, Samsung has introduced the Circle to Search feature. While browsing the web or using social media, users can simply draw a circle on the screen to search for the information instantly without the need to switch to other app. Thanks to AI, the camera quality has improved compared to its previous model. With upgraded features like nitography, photos and videos shot are clear even when using the zoom feature in low-light environments such as at night. With its Galaxy AI editing tools, it can also fill in parts of an image background. If an object needs a slight adjustment, AI allows users to move the subject and generates a perfectly blended background in its original spot. Some experts have questioned the need for AI smartphones, expressing concern about whether on-device AI can offer truly new experiences, especially given that numerous useful apps already exist. However, one expert says it differs from existing services.
The fact that AI services are provided more quickly, even in offline environments, adds unique appeal. Now, the question is how widely this new experience will spread. I expect that AI smartphones will introduce a whole new dimension, fostering widespread adoption.
The S24 Ultra is priced from $1,300, the S24 Plus will cost $1,000, and the S24 will retail at $800. The series will be available in stores across the world from January 31st. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
South Korea's trade ministry has shifted its funding plans for R&D projects towards bigger and riskier projects rather than those smaller in scale. Or Moon Ha-yeon explains.
Funding for industry research and development will now be centered around high-risk, high-return projects, as well as fostering future talent. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy held a roundtable session on Thursday to announce how it would spend its portion of the 2024 R&D budget, which is around a fifth of the country's total R&D budget. 70% will be allocated to provide support in 11 key sectors, such as the semiconductor industry, which has recently begun to show signs of recovery. This equates to around 1.3 trillion Korean won, or just under $970 million for the government, but a total of 2 trillion won of public and private funding will be given to 40 projects in these sectors this year. Continuing with the overarching theme of concentrating efforts towards select projects, the government will also increase support to develop what it has dubbed game-changer technology. To do this, the Industry Ministry has pledged to set aside 10% of its annual budget to support high-risk projects to solve industry issues. In addition, it aims to reduce small-scale projects and focus instead on those on a larger scale to maximize market performance, and to do this, it will be expanding the number of projects worth more than 10 billion won from 57 last year to 160 projects this year, by combining those with similar research goals. A new methodology to assign research and development projects will be implemented this year to give companies and researchers a more active role. The government will present goals that need to be achieved, and companies and researchers can lead the project planning process, where they can form a consortium and allocate research funds among themselves. Another key area in which funding will be raised is nurturing future talent by increasing the number of graduate school programs in new industry areas, such as chips, batteries and displays, from the current 3 to 11 this year. 문혜련, Arirang News.
As South Korea's total birth rate is expected to fall to a fresh low of 0.68 this year, the nation's rival main parties announced new election pledges aimed at tackling this. Their plans entail measures to help parents better balance their professional and family lives. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
With just a little over 80 days left until South Korea's 22nd general election, the parties each announced on Thursday a new set of pledges aiming for a common goal: to save the country with the lowest birth rate in the world since 2013 from its declining population. The ruling People Power Party says its main goal is to bridge the gaps across families with varying incomes and working environments.
This low birth rate issue is related to the gap when it comes to the burden of raising a child and the gap between working at large corporations and small businesses. We think that bridging these gaps is the first step toward solving the low birth rate issue and building a society of co-prosperity.
The party plans to make a month-long paid paternity leave mandatory and amend laws to guarantee childcare leave upon request. Furthermore, they will increase the maximum monthly childcare leave payment of 1.5 million Korean won, or around $1,100 to 2.1 million Korean won, around $1,600 to match the minimum wage. Small businesses will be given additional incentives for implementing childcare leave. And by 2025, there will be more support for those not covered by national employment insurance, such as independent artists and farmers. The main opposition Democratic Party, meanwhile, is putting the emphasis on providing financial and housing support.
The state will directly support the formation of basic assets for all newlyweds. We will further strengthen the nation's responsibility for childbirth and care and come up with groundbreaking measures to deal with the housing problem.
The party will offer public rental housing for parents of 2 or more children. It will also give out no-interest loans of up to 100 million Korean won, around $75,000 for newlyweds with a child, and a 50% reduction of the principal upon the birth of a second child. The birth of a third child would grant a 100% repayment exemption. Monthly cash vouchers will be given to parents of school-age children worth around 200,000 Korean won, or around $150. Plus, there will be more childcare support for single and unmarried parents. Both parties aim to establish a new ministry focused on the declining population problem. In response to the proposal, Sung Tae-yoon, the director of the Presidential National Policy Office, agreed that revolutionary policies were needed in terms of social infrastructure and the economy to deal with this issue appropriately. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Moving on, President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday appointed the current Deputy Prosecutor General, Shim Woo-jung, as the new Vice Minister of Justice. Shim, a career prosecutor, had a stint at the Ministry of Justice as its Chief of Planning and Coordination Bureau. The announcement came just hours after reports said Vice Minister Lee No-gong resigned. She had been the interim justice minister as former Minister Han Dong-hoon left the position to lead the ruling People Power Party. The top office explained that with Shim's rich experience in legal administration, it expects him to carry out the duties smoothly. Over in Davos, the annual World Economic Forum continues, where global leaders are focusing on addressing climate change. The UN Secretary General called for a fossil fuel phase-out and a just and equitable transition to renewable energy. Our Yoon reports.
The climate crisis is in the spotlight at this year's annual World Economic Forum underway in Davos as one of the most alarming risks over the next decade. On Wednesday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres reminded leaders of governments and businesses that the phase-out of fossil fuels is essential and inevitable to avoid a global climate catastrophe.
Let me be very clear again. The phase-out of fossil fuels is essential and inevitable. No amount of spin or scare tactics will change that. Let's hope it doesn't come too late.
The UN chief emphasized that our planet is still heading for a scorching 3 degrees increase in global temperatures, and natural disasters like droughts, storms, fires, and floods are destroying countries and communities. He alarmed leaders by stating that while 2023 went down as the hottest year on record, but could be considered cool compared to temperatures in the future. The EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service revealed just last week that 2023 had been the hottest year on record, with major implications for keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. That followed the recent COP28 climate summit in Dubai, where nearly 200 countries agreed to begin reducing global consumption of fossil fuels to avert the worst of climate change. Meanwhile, International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said that countries need to shift some $7 trillion in direct and indirect annual subsidies for fossil fuels to help finance the fight against climate change, adding that the price of subsidies need to be set at $85 per ton by 2030. And John Kerry, the outgoing U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, affirmed that the transition toward clean energy and electric vehicles will not be interrupted, regardless of who wins the 2024 U.S. presidential election, adding that a revolution is underway that is much bigger than any politician or any one person. 이은진, Arirang News.
In other news, Japan is aiming to become the 5th country to successfully land on the moon. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency announced on Thursday that its probe named Smart Lander for investigating moon will begin its 20-minute descent to the moon from midnight on Saturday. This lunar mission comes after 2 previous moon landing attempts failed, one public and one private-led. The probe will be using pinpoint technology to land within 100 meters of its target on the lunar surface, a technology that allows spacecraft to land at precise locations. If successful, Japan will become the 5th country after the United States, the Soviet Union, China, and India to land a spacecraft on the moon.
Rain that had been falling for 2 days stopped in most regions today, and the daytime temperatures in Seoul rose to 10 degrees Celsius, making it relatively cozy. Most of the snow that piled up on the streets also melted. However, a heavy snow warning has been issued in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province. Snow is falling in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do, with more than 2 centimeters of snow already piled up. Up to 15 centimeters is forecast until tomorrow. In addition, up to 7 centimeters are expected on the east coast of Gangwon-do province. This is expected to last long until this weekend, so you'll need to be thoroughly prepared. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start at 2, Daegu 4 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, most regions will see milder temperatures. Seoul and Daejeon 8, Gwangju and Busan 11 degrees Celsius. Even on the weekend, there will be lots of rain in the southern parts of the country. Next week, morning temperatures in Seoul will plunge to around minus 10 degrees Celsius, and the weather will get cold rapidly. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that's all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Good night.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead